Commander Velthar stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the small vessel drift in the darkness of space. The ship was damaged, leaking atmosphere through a crack in its hull. It was a pitiful sight. In all his years serving the Ascendancy fleet, he had seen thousands of ships like this one. Most belonged to species that had tried to resist the Ascendancy's expansion. All of them had failed. "Should we destroy it, Commander?" his tactical officer asked. Velthar studied the readings on his screen. The ship was primitive by Ascendancy standards. Its weapons were offline. Its engines were barely functional. Inside there was only one life sign remaining. "No," Velthar said. "Bring it aboard. I want to see what species flies such outdated technology." The tractor beam pulled the small ship into the hangar bay. Velthar walked down to meet the survivor, curious about what he would find. When the airlock opened, a figure stumbled out wearing a damaged pressure suit. The alien removed his helmet, and Velthar saw a face that looked remarkably fragile. 2 eyes, 1 mouth, hair on the top of the head. The creature looked around with an expression that Velthar could not quite identify. "Thank you," the alien said in broken Ascendancy common language. "You saved my life." Velthar was surprised. Most survivors were terrified when captured by the Ascendancy. They begged for mercy or tried to fight. This one was thanking him. "What species are you?" Velthar asked. "I am human," the alien replied. "My name is Do-hyun. I was part of a science expedition studying the nebula formations in this sector. Our ship hit a spatial anomaly and was destroyed. I am the only one who escaped." Velthar examined Do-hyun more closely. The human was small with no visible armor plating on his skin, no claws or fangs, no psychic energy signature. His body temperature was average, his strength unremarkable. By every measurement the Ascendancy used to evaluate species, humans were ordinary, perhaps even below average. "You will be detained until we decide what to do with you," Velthar said. "Take him to the holding cells." 2 guards escorted Do-hyun away. The human did not resist. He simply walked between them with a calm expression, still looking around at the ship with what appeared to be curiosity rather than fear. 3 days later, Velthar's ship arrived at the Ascendancy command station. The station was massive, housing thousands of soldiers and administrators who managed the expansion of their empire. As Velthar walked through the corridors toward the council chambers, he thought about the human. Do-hyun had been quiet during the journey, asking only for food and water. The guards reported that he spent most of his time sleeping or staring at the walls of his cell. When Velthar entered the council chambers, he was surprised to find another human already there. This one was female, wearing formal diplomatic clothing. She stood before the Ascendancy High Council with perfect posture, showing no signs of intimidation despite being surrounded by beings that could kill her with ease. "Commander Velthar," the head counselor said, "you have arrived at an interesting time. This is Yuna, a human diplomat. She has been negotiating humanity's application to join the Galactic Council as a recognized species." Velthar nodded to Yuna. She returned the gesture, with a slight bow. "We were just discussing the expansion of human colonies into contested space," the counselor continued. "The Ascendancy believes humans have been settling on worlds that belong to us by right of conquest." Yuna spoke calmly. "With respect, those worlds were uninhabited when we arrived. The Ascendancy abandoned them 300 years ago after depleting their resources. We are simply using what was left behind." "Abandoned territory still belongs to the Ascendancy," another counselor said. "Your presence there is illegal." "We can negotiate resource-sharing agreements," Yuna offered. "Humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all species, including the Ascendancy." The head counselor leaned forward. "And what if the Ascendancy decides negotiation is unnecessary? What if we simply take what is ours?" For the first time, Velthar saw something change in Yuna's expression. It was subtle but unmistakable. Her eyes became colder, her smile more rigid. "That would be inadvisable," she said quietly. The counselors laughed. Velthar understood their amusement. The Ascendancy had conquered species far more advanced than humanity. What could these weak, soft creatures possibly do to resist? "Your confidence is admirable but misplaced," the head counselor said. "The Ascendancy will conduct a military assessment of human defenses. If you cannot defend your settlements, they will become ours. This is how we have always operated." Yuna's expression did not change. "I must formally protest this action and warn you that humanity will respond to any attack on our citizens." "We are terrified," the head counselor said mockingly. The other counselors laughed again. Yuna bowed respectfully and left the chamber. Velthar watched her go, feeling that strange sensation again. Something was wrong, but he could not identify what it was. After the meeting, Velthar went to the detention level to check on Do-Yun. He found the human sitting cross-legged on the floor of his cell, eyes closed as if meditating. "You are being released," Velthar said. "Your diplomat has arranged for your return to human space." Do-Yun opened his eyes and stood up. "Thank you, Commander. Will there be war between our peoples?" "That depends on humans," Velthar replied. "The Ascendancy is testing your defenses. If you are weak, you will submit. If you are strong, perhaps we will negotiate." Do-Hyun nodded slowly. "I see. May I ask you something, Commander?" "Speak." "In all your years of conquest, have you ever encountered a species that truly frightened you?" Velthar considered the question. "No, fear is what lesser species experience. The Ascendancy has never had reason to fear." "I understand," Do-Hyun said. He smiled, and Velthar noticed that the smile did not reach his eyes. "Thank you for saving my life, Commander. I hope we meet again under better circumstances." As guards escorted Do-Hyun to the departure bay, Velthar returned to the bridge of his ship. The High Council had given him his orders. He would lead a small fleet to raid one of the human mining colonies. It would be simple work. The colony was lightly defended, populated mostly by civilians. They would surrender quickly, and humanity would learn that resistance against the Ascendancy was futile. Velthar watched as the transport carrying Do-Hyun and Yuna departed the station. The small ship accelerated away, heading back toward human space. He wondered if he would see either of them again. Probably not. After the raid, humanity would likely submit to Ascendancy rule, and both Do-Hyun and Yuna would become irrelevant footnotes in the expansion records. He began preparing his fleet for departure. Within a week, they would arrive at the human colony designated Taejin 9. The raid would take no more than a few hours. Then this minor complication would be resolved, and the Ascendancy could continue its eternal expansion across the galaxy. Velthar did not know it yet, but he was about to learn what fear truly meant. The planet Taejin 9 appeared on the view screen as Velthar's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It was a rocky world with minimal atmosphere, valuable only for the rare minerals buried beneath its surface. According to the Ascendancy's intelligence reports, 3,000 humans lived here, operating mining equipment and processing facilities. The colony had 4 outdated defense platforms and no military vessels. "Begin standard intimidation protocol," Velthar ordered. "Send the surrender demand." His communications officer transmitted the message. It was simple and direct. The same message the Ascendancy had sent to hundreds of colonies before. Surrender within 1 hour or face complete destruction. The response came within minutes. A human face appeared on the view screen. He was middle-aged with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. But he was not smiling now. "This is Minsuk, colony administrator of Taejin 9, the human said. "We have received your demand." "Our answer is no." Velthar was surprised. Most colonies surrendered immediately when faced with overwhelming force. Those that did not usually tried to negotiate, buying time for civilians to evacuate. This human had simply refused. "You have 3,000 civilians and 4 defense platforms," Velthar said. "I have 12 warships and 6,000 soldiers. Resistance is pointless. Surrender now and your people will not be harmed." Minsuk's expression did not change. "Commander, I am going to say this once. Leave our system now or you will regret coming here." The bridge crew laughed. Even Velthar smiled at the absurdity of the threat. "You have 1 hour," Velthar said, cutting the transmission. He turned to his tactical officer. "Destroy one of their defense platforms. Show them we are serious." The fleet's weapons charged and fired. Brilliant beams of energy crossed the distance between the fleet and the colony. The targeted defense platform exploded in a shower of debris. Velthar waited for the surrender message. It did not come. Instead, something unexpected happened. The remaining 3 defense platforms began moving. They detached from their orbital positions and started accelerating directly toward the Ascendancy fleet. "Suicide run," the tactical officer said. "Should we destroy them?" "Not yet," Velthar said, curious. "Let us see what they do." The platforms were old and slow. It would take them 30 minutes to reach the fleet. More than enough time to destroy them if they became a threat. But then Velthar's sensors detected something strange. The platforms were not alone. Dozens of mining ships were launching from the colony, following behind the platforms. "Are they evacuating?" the tactical officer asked. "No," Velthar said slowly, studying the sensor data. "They are attacking." It was insane. Mining ships had no weapons. They were designed to haul ore, not fight wars, but the humans were sending them directly at the Ascendancy fleet anyway. "Destroy the defense platforms," Velthar ordered. "Ignore the mining ships. They cannot harm us." The fleet's weapons fired again. 2 of the defense platforms exploded. The third managed to launch all its missiles before it was destroyed. 12 missiles streaked toward the fleet. Velthar's ship destroyed most of them with point defense fire, but 2 got through. They struck one of the smaller Ascendancy vessels, damaging its engines. "Minimal damage," the tactical officer reported. "The ship is still combat capable." But now the mining ships were getting close. Velthar watched as they spread out, surrounding his fleet. They still had no weapons. What were the humans planning? He got his answer when the first mining ship detonated. The explosion caught everyone by surprise. The mining ship had been loaded with explosives and fuel when it detonated next to an Ascendancy cruiser. The blast ripped a hole in the cruiser's hull. Atmosphere vented into space. The cruiser began spinning out of control. "They are using their own ships as bombs," the tactical officer shouted. More mining ships exploded. The humans had turned every vessel they had into a weapon. 2 more Ascendancy ships took damage. One was completely destroyed when a mining ship crashed into its reactor core. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Velthar commanded. "Destroy those mining ships before they reach us." The fleet scattered, firing at the incoming vessels. But there were so many of them, and they were moving in unpredictable patterns. The humans were piloting them manually, making last-second course corrections that made them difficult to hit. Every time an Ascendancy gunner locked onto a target, the mining ship would change direction. Velthar realized with growing alarm that the humans were not trying to win this battle. They were trying to make the Ascendancy pay the highest possible price for their attack, and it was working. "Ground forces, begin landing operations," Velthar ordered. "We will take the colony facilities directly." Troop transports launched from the fleet, carrying soldiers down to the planet's surface. Velthar watched the tactical display as his forces approached the main colony habitat. The humans would have fortified their positions, but standard Ascendancy assault tactics would overwhelm them quickly. The landing parties reached the surface and began their advance. Then the reports started coming in. "Heavy resistance at Landing Zone 3. The humans have turned the mining equipment into weapons. They are dropping loads of ore onto our troops from above. Landing Zone 5 is under fire. The humans rigged the refinery to explode. Half our assault team is down. We have reached the main habitat. The blast doors are sealed. We need heavy cutters to the transmission cut off." Velthar pulled up the video feed from the assault team's cameras. He watched as the blast doors suddenly opened, revealing not a defensive position but an empty corridor. The soldiers advanced cautiously. Then the corridor filled with flame. The humans had vented their own fuel lines, turning the entire habitat into a trap. "Commander," his sensor operator said urgently, "the humans are evacuating through underground tunnels. They are heading into the old mining shafts beneath the colony." Velthar understood immediately. The humans had never intended to defend the colony itself. They had used the facilities as weapons and traps, inflicting maximum damage while buying time to evacuate civilians through the mine networks. "Send troops into the tunnels," Velthar ordered. "Do not let them escape." "Commander, the tunnel networks are unstable. Our engineers warn that any weapons fire could cause collapses." "I do not care. Send them in." The assault teams entered the tunnels. For an hour, Velthar received scattered reports of skirmishes in the darkness beneath the colony. The humans were fighting a retreat, using their knowledge of the mine system to ambush his soldiers. Then a new report came in. "Commander, we found the colony administrator. He is alone in the central mining chamber. He says he wants to negotiate." Velthar felt relief. Finally, the human leader was ready to surrender. "Put him on visual." Minsok appeared on the screen. He was covered in dust and blood, but he was smiling. "Commander Velthar," Minsok said, "I told you that you would regret coming here." "Surrender now," Velthar demanded. "Your civilians have escaped. There is no point in continuing this fight." "You are right," Minsok said. "There is no point. That is why I am ending it." Velthar saw Minsok raise something in his hand. It was a detonator. "The entire mine system is rigged to collapse," Minsok said calmly. I stayed behind to make sure it worked properly. Your soldiers are in the tunnels right now. When I press this button, they will die. So will I, but my people will live. That is all that matters. Wait, Velthar began. Minseok pressed the button. The planet's surface erupted. The entire mine network collapsed in a series of massive explosions. The colony facilities fell into the sinkholes that opened beneath them. Every Ascendancy soldier in the tunnels was crushed or buried. Seismic waves rippled across the planet's surface. On the bridge, Velthar stared at the devastation in silence. He had lost 4 ships in orbit and nearly 2,000 soldiers on the ground. The colony was completely destroyed, and the human administrator had killed himself just to take more Ascendancy soldiers with him. Recall all forces, Velthar said quietly. We are leaving. As his fleet departed the Tajin 9 system, Velthar wrote his report to the High Council. He tried to explain what had happened, but words failed him. How could he describe warriors who turned their own homes into weapons, who chose death rather than surrender, who smiled as they killed themselves to hurt their enemies? For the first time in his life, Commander Velthar felt something he had never experienced before. It was a cold sensation in his chest, a tightness in his breathing. He did not recognize it at first. It was fear. News of Tajin 9 spread across human space faster than any Ascendancy fleet could travel. Within days, every human colony knew what had happened. They knew about Minseok and the 3,000 civilians. They knew about the miners who had turned their ships into weapons. They knew about the administrator who had chosen death over surrender. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the situation. The council mediator, a being of pure energy named Korath, addressed the assembly with concern. The attack on Tajin 9 violated several interstellar treaties, Korath said. The Ascendancy must answer for this aggression. However, we urge humanity to pursue diplomatic solutions. War benefits no one. The human representative stood. His name was Hyunwoo, and he had been appointed as the new Human Defense Director just hours after the attack. He was young by diplomatic standards, barely 40 years old, but his eyes held no youth. With respect to the council, Hyunwoo said, his voice cold and clear, you speak of diplomacy to a species that just murdered 3,000 civilians without provocation. We sent our own diplomat to negotiate peace. The Ascendancy laughed at her warnings. They attacked anyway. Now you ask us to negotiate? Violence will only lead to more violence, Korath replied. The Ascendancy is one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Humanity has only recently achieved space travel. A war would be devastating for your species. Hyunwoo looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from 100 different worlds. My species has a saying, you do not negotiate with those who attack your family. You make them regret ever raising their hand against you. He turned and left the chamber. Behind him, the council erupted into worried discussion. Velthar watched the recording of the council session from his ship. He had been ordered to patrol the border of human space, monitoring their activities. The High Council was concerned about humanity's response, but they remained confident. Humans were young and inexperienced. They would make threats, but when faced with the full might of the Ascendancy, they would back down. Velthar was not so sure anymore. He remembered Minseok's smile as he pressed the detonator. He remembered Dohyun's question about fear. Something was different about humans, something the Ascendancy had never encountered before. His suspicions were confirmed 3 days later. Commander, we are detecting unusual activity in the Outer Reach sector, his sensor operator reported. Multiple human vessels are operating there. The Outer Reach was Ascendancy territory, far from human colonies. What are they doing there? Unknown, sir. They appear to be hunting our supply convoys. Velthar felt that cold sensation again. Show me. The tactical display showed a dozen human ships moving through Ascendancy space. They were small vessels, fast and difficult to detect. As Velthar watched, one of them intercepted an Ascendancy supply ship. The supply ship was 3 times larger and better armed. It should have been an easy fight, it was not. The human vessel moved in ways that seemed impossible, dodging weapons fire with sudden course changes that should have torn the ship apart from G-forces. It fired precisely at the supply ship's weak points: engines, weapon systems, communication arrays. Within minutes, the supply ship was disabled and drifting. Then something even more shocking happened. The human ship docked with the disabled vessel. Soldiers boarded it. Through the security cameras, Velthar watched as human fighters moved through the corridors of the Ascendancy ship, room by room, deck by deck. They moved with terrifying efficiency, using tactics that seemed designed specifically to counter Ascendancy combat doctrine. Within an hour, the supply ship was captured. The human vessel departed with its prize, vanishing into the darkness of space before Ascendancy reinforcements could arrive. "This is the 7th supply convoy attacked this week," his tactical officer said. "The humans are targeting our logistics network. They know we cannot defend every supply route." Over the following weeks, the attacks intensified. Human ships appeared throughout Ascendancy territory, striking at military installations, supply depots, and communication stations. They never engaged in large battles. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, attacking when the Ascendancy was unprepared and retreating before reinforcements arrived. Velthar recognized the strategy. It was guerrilla warfare, something the Ascendancy had never faced before. Every species they conquered fought in conventional ways, fleets meeting fleets, armies meeting armies. Humans were different. They refused to fight fair. The High Council ordered increased patrols and stronger defenses. It made no difference. The humans adapted to every countermeasure. When the Ascendancy began using convoys, humans attacked the convoy escorts. When the Ascendancy installed better sensors, humans used stealth technology. When the Ascendancy changed their patrol routes, humans hacked their communications and learned the new routes. Then the reports began coming in about something even more disturbing. "Commander, we captured a human vessel that attacked one of our outposts," his intelligence officer said. "We interrogated the pilot. Her name is Jisoo, a combat engineer. She claims to have studied our tactics for 3 weeks before the attack." "3 weeks?" Velthar repeated. "That is impossible. It takes years to understand enemy combat doctrine." "That is what she said, Commander. She explained that humans have been analyzing every engagement, every battle, every mistake we make. They are learning from us." Velthar went to the detention cells to see this Jisoo himself. She was small, even by human standards, with short dark hair and eyes that seemed too calm for someone in captivity. "You are Commander Velthar," Jisoo said when he entered. "You led the attack on Tajan 9. I studied your command patterns. You are tactically competent but predictable. You follow doctrine too closely. That is your weakness." Velthar was stunned by her directness. "You are a prisoner. You have no leverage for such confidence," Jisoo smiled. It reminded Velthar of Minseok's smile before he died. "I am not confident, Commander. I am simply stating facts. Your military has not changed its tactics in 200 years. You conquered species that fought the way you expected them to fight. But humans do not fight like other species. How do humans fight?" Velthar asked, genuinely curious. "We fight to win," Jisoo said, "not to follow honor codes or maintain tradition. We study our enemies and find their weaknesses. We adapt, we learn. Every battle against us makes us more dangerous because we never make the same mistake twice." "You speak of yourself as if you are still a threat," Velthar said. "You are captured. Your ship is destroyed. You have failed." Jisoo's smile widened. "Have I? My mission was to gather information about Ascendancy detention procedures and security protocols. I have been observing your guards, your security systems, your response times. I have learned much. When I am exchanged in the next prisoner swap, I will share everything I learned with Human Defense Command. They will use it to plan the next phase of operations." Velthar felt anger rising in him. "You intentionally allowed yourself to be captured?" "Information is a weapon, Commander," Jisoo said. "Every interaction with your forces teaches us more about how to defeat you. You think you are containing the threat by capturing us, but we are learning from captivity just as we learn from combat." After leaving the detention cell, Velthar went to his private quarters. He sat in silence, thinking about what Jisoo had said. The Ascendancy was fighting an enemy that treated every defeat as a lesson, every engagement as an opportunity to improve. That night, Velthar received new orders from the High Council. They had decided that limited strikes were not working. Humanity needed to be defeated decisively, completely, and permanently. The Ascendancy was assembling its largest battle fleet in 2 centuries. Their target was Earth itself, the human homeworld. The High Council believed that destroying Earth would break humanity's spirit. They would lose their will to fight once their birth world fell. Velthar read the orders and felt that cold sensation spreading through his entire body. The High Council did not understand what they were doing. They thought they were attacking a weak species on their home planet, but Velthar had seen what happened at Tajin 9. He had watched humans turn their own colony into a weapon. He had spoken to Jisu and understood that humans learned from every encounter. He had seen the cold determination in Hyunwoo's eyes at the Galactic Council. The High Council thought they were about to win a war. Velthar knew they were about to learn what fear truly meant. The Ascendancy fleet that approached Earth was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 300 warships carrying 500,000 soldiers, equipped with weapons that could crack planets. The High Council had committed nearly a third of their entire military to this single operation. There would be no retreat, no negotiation, only total victory. Velthar commanded one of the vanguard battle groups. As his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, he saw the human homeworld for the first time. It was a blue and green sphere, beautiful in its simplicity. Clouds swirled across its surface. Lights marked cities on the night side. It looked peaceful, it was not. Sensor contacts, his operator called out. Thousands of them. Orbital defense stations, weapons platforms, military vessels. Commander, the entire planet is fortified. Velthar studied the tactical display in disbelief. In the months since Tajin 9, humanity had transformed Earth into a fortress. Every major city had ground to space weapons. Satellites armed with missiles orbited in carefully coordinated patterns. Hundreds of defensive stations formed multiple layers of protection around the planet. And between these defenses moved human warships. Not the small raiders that had been harassing Ascendancy supply lines, but proper military vessels built specifically for war. How did they build all this so quickly? The tactical officer asked. They were preparing for this, Velthar said quietly. They knew we would come. The fleet admiral broadcast the surrender demand. As before, it was simple and direct. Surrender or face extinction. The response came not from a military commander, but from Yuna, the diplomat Velthar had met months ago. Admiral, this is Yuna speaking on behalf of the Human Defense Command and the people of Earth, she said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. You have brought your fleet to attack our homeworld without provocation or declaration of war. You have murdered our civilians. You have rejected every diplomatic overture, and now you demand our surrender. You have 1 hour, the Admiral replied. No, Yuna said simply. You misunderstand the situation. You are not here to conquer Earth. You are here to learn a lesson. You wanted to know if humanity would fight. You wanted to test our resolve. Very well. We will show you exactly what happens when you threaten our home. The transmission cut off. For a moment, the fleet waited in silence. Then the lights of Earth changed. Every city, every station, every platform activated simultaneously. The planet seemed to glow with energy as power systems came online, and Velthar realized with horror that humanity had turned their entire homeworld into a weapon. All ships battle formation, the Admiral ordered. Begin the attack! The fleet advanced. As they crossed into weapons range, Earth's defenses opened fire. The sky lit up with energy beams, missiles, and projectiles. The first wave of Ascendancy ships met a wall of fire that was incomprehensible in its intensity. Dozens of vessels were destroyed in the first minutes of battle, but the Ascendancy fleet was massive and well-equipped. They returned fire, destroying orbital stations and weapons platforms. The battle quickly became chaos as hundreds of ships fought. Across the space around Earth, Velthar watched as human defenders fought, with the same desperate determination he had seen at Tajin 9. Damaged orbital stations rammed themselves into Ascendancy cruisers. Human pilots flew their fighters into the engines of capital ships. When their weapons ran out, they used their vessels as weapons. On the surface of Earth, billions of humans worked as one coordinated system. In Seoul, a teenager named Taemin helped operate defensive networks from his school, which had been converted into a command center. In Mumbai, a doctor named Nari treated wounded soldiers in a hospital that was under continuous bombardment, refusing to evacuate even when the building was hit. In São Paulo, in New York, in Moscow, in Lagos, everywhere, humans fought not as soldiers, but as people defending their home. The Ascendancy fleet began to take serious casualties. The Admiral ordered the deployment of planet cracker weapons, massive bombs designed to cause extinction-level damage. But human fighters intercepted them, destroying the weapons before they could reach their targets. Some pilots flew their damaged ships directly into the bombs, detonating them safely in space at the cost of their own lives. Velthar's ship engaged a human destroyer. The battle was fierce but brief. The human vessel was outmatched and took critical damage. As it began to break apart, Velthar expected the crew to evacuate. They did not. Instead, the destroyer's captain, a man named Jawan, broadcast a final message. For Tajan 9, for humanity, we will never surrender. The destroyer's engine suddenly flared to maximum power. The dying ship accelerated directly at Velthar's flagship. Velthar ordered evasive maneuvers, but it was too late. The destroyer crashed into his ship's side, tearing through armor and hull. Explosions rippled across Velthar's bridge. Systems failed. The lights went out. When emergency power restored basic functions, Velthar found his ship crippled and drifting. Half his crew was dead. The bridge was filled with smoke and the screams of wounded soldiers. Through the cracked view screen, he could see the battle continuing around him. And the Ascendancy was losing. That was when Yuna's face appeared on every functioning display across the Ascendancy fleet. Her calm expression was gone. Now she looked at them with eyes that held no mercy. "You attacked our home," she said. "Now you will understand why we are the only species in our planet's history that hunted apex predators for sport. Why we thrived in environments that killed other species. Why we tell stories of monsters to frighten our children. Because we have always been the scariest thing in our own darkness." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You studied our military capability and deemed us weak. But you did not study our history. You did not learn that humans have fought each other in wars that killed millions, that we survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have ended our species, that we climbed to the top of our food chain not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we refused to die, because we learned from every failure, because we never ever gave up." Around Velthar's crippled ship, the battle reached its conclusion. The Ascendancy fleet, once the pride of their empire, was being systematically destroyed. Human forces were not just fighting, they were hunting. Every Ascendancy vessel that tried to retreat was pursued and eliminated. No mercy was given. No surrender was accepted. "You wanted war," Yuna continued. "We gave you war. But understand this, we did not want this. We offered peace. We offered coexistence. You chose violence. Now you face the consequences." Velthar's ship was boarded by human Marines. They moved through the corridors with devastating efficiency, overwhelming his remaining soldiers. When they reached the bridge, Velthar stood to face them, expecting to die. But the human squad leader, a woman whose uniform identified her as Commander Subin, lowered her weapon. "Commander Velthar," she said, "you are a prisoner of war. We are taking you into custody." "Why?" Velthar asked. "Why not kill me?" "Because we are not monsters," Subin replied. "Despite what you have done, we do not kill prisoners. We are better than that, but you will stand trial for your crimes against humanity." As Velthar was escorted from his ship, he looked back at Earth. The planet still glowed with defensive systems, still bristled with weapons, but the battle was over. The Ascendancy fleet was destroyed. Of the 300 warships that had attacked, perhaps 30 remained, all crippled and captured. Velthar understood something then that changed him forever. Humanity had not won because they were stronger or more advanced. They had won because they understood something the Ascendancy did not. Fear was not weakness. Fear was survival instinct, refined over millions of years of evolution, and humanity had learned to weaponize it, to turn their own fear into determination and use their enemies' lack of fear against them. The Ascendancy had never known fear. That was their weakness. Humanity understood fear intimately. They had lived with it their entire history. They knew how to face it, fight through it, and emerge stronger. As Velthar was taken to a human detention facility, he realized that only with humanity had he finally understood what fear truly meant. And that understanding came too late to save his fleet, his empire, or himself. The detention facility was nothing like Velthar expected. He had prepared himself for torture, for degradation, for the treatment that the Ascendancy gave to their prisoners. Instead, he found himself in a clean cell with a comfortable bed, regular meals, and access to medical care. Guards treated him with professional courtesy. When he asked for books to read, they were provided. When he needed medicine for his injuries from the battle, Doctors treated him without hesitation. It was disturbing in ways that torture would not have been. 3 weeks after his capture, Velthar received his first visitor. It was Do-hyun, the human pilot he had rescued months ago. Do-hyun sat across from him in the visiting room, studying Velthar with the same curious expression he had shown on the Ascendancy ship. "Commander Velthar," Do-hyun said. "We meet again as I hoped we would." "You knew this would happen," Velthar said. "It was not a question. I suspected," Do-hyun admitted. "The Ascendancy has a pattern. Test a new species with a small attack. If they seem weak, escalate to total conquest. If they resist, escalate to overwhelming force. Your tactics are predictable because they have worked for centuries. Until humanity." "Until humanity," Do-hyun agreed. "We studied your history before we ever left our solar system. We knew contact with aggressive species was inevitable, so we prepared, not just militarily but psychologically. We studied every war humanity ever fought against itself and learned from those lessons." Velthar was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that had haunted him since the battle. "Why do you treat us well? We murdered your people. We tried to destroy your planet. Why not take revenge?" "Because revenge is not justice," Do-hyun said. "And because we understand something that the Ascendancy does not. Violence creates cycles. If we treated you the way you treated us, we would become what we fought against. Humanity has learned this lesson many times in our own history. We refuse to repeat those mistakes." Over the following months, Velthar watched as humanity reshaped galactic politics. The defeat of the Ascendancy fleet sent shockwaves across known space. Other aggressive species suddenly became very cautious about approaching human territory. The Galactic Council, which had urged humanity to avoid war, now granted humans a permanent seat on the Security Council, but humanity's terms for peace were not what anyone expected. The human, Representative Hyunwoo presented, humanity's demands to the Ascendancy High Council. Velthar watched the broadcast from his cell, curious to see what punishment humanity would demand. "The Ascendancy will undergo complete demilitarization," Hyunwoo announced. "Your war fleet will be dismantled. Your weapons technology will be placed under Galactic Council oversight. Your military academies will be closed." The Ascendancy High Council erupted in protest. "You cannot do this. We are a sovereign empire." "You are a sovereign empire," Hyunwoo corrected. "You lost that right when you attacked civilian targets without provocation. However, humanity is not interested in conquest. We do not want to rule you. We want to ensure you never threaten another species again." "And how will you enforce this?" the head counselor demanded. "The Ascendancy military forces that remain will be reorganized into a peacekeeping division under Joint Human Galactic Council Command," Hyunwoo explained. "Your soldiers will be retrained. Your ships will be refitted for humanitarian missions. You will learn to defend rather than attack, to protect rather than conquer." It was brilliant and humiliating at the same time. Humanity was not destroying the Ascendancy. They were reforming it, forcing it to become something better. And by placing Ascendancy forces under joint command, they were ensuring that the galaxy's other species had a stake in the success of that reformation. 6 months after the battle, Velthar received another visitor. This time it was Yuna, the diplomat he had met at the beginning of this conflict. "Commander," she said, sitting across from him, "your trial is scheduled to begin next month. I wanted to speak with you before that." "I will be found guilty," Velthar said. "I led the attack on Tajin 9. I commanded forces that killed civilians. I do not deny this." "No, you do not," Yuna agreed. "But the court will consider context. You were following orders from your superiors. You were acting according to Ascendancy doctrine. These are mitigating factors." "Are you trying to help me?" Velthar asked, confused. "I am trying to ensure justice is served," Yuna said. "Justice, not revenge. You will be held accountable for your actions. But we want to understand why those actions occurred. We want to ensure that the system that created soldiers like you is dismantled, not just the soldiers themselves." Velthar looked at her for a long moment. "I wrote something," he said finally. "A memoir of sorts, about what I learned fighting humanity. My guards said it might be published." "Is that true?" "If you wish it," Yuna said. "Many people, both human and alien, want to understand what happened." "Your perspective could be valuable. I called it Only with Humanity Did I Understand What Fear Truly Is," Velthar said. "Because that is the truth. The Ascendancy conquered hundreds of species without ever knowing fear. We thought that made us strong. but it made us vulnerable. We did not understand the concept of fighting for survival because we had never truly been threatened. And now, Yuna asked, now I understand that fear is not weakness. Fear is wisdom. It is the instinct that tells you when you face something dangerous, something that requires respect. Humanity respects fear. That is why you survived. That is why you won. The trial proceeded as expected. Velthar was found guilty of war crimes but was sentenced to community service rather than imprisonment. He would spend the next 20 years working with human educators to develop new ascendancy military doctrine based on defense and peacekeeping rather than conquest. It was strange work at first. Velthar struggled to adjust his thinking from offense to defense, from domination to protection. But slowly, over months and years, he began to understand the human philosophy. Strength was not just the ability to destroy. True strength was the wisdom to know when not to fight, and the courage to fight only when necessary. 10 years after the Battle of Earth, Velthar was given permission to return to his homeworld for a visit. He walked through streets he had not seen in a decade, noting the changes. Ascendancy cities had always been grand and imposing, designed to showcase military might. Now they were different, softer, more welcoming. Parks had been built. Schools taught history from multiple perspectives, not just ascendancy propaganda. Children of different species played together in public spaces. In one of these parks, Velthar saw a small human child playing on the swings. Her name was Somin, and she was part of a cultural exchange program between humanity and the ascendancy. She laughed as she swung higher, completely unaware that she was playing in the capital of an empire that had once tried to destroy her species. Velthar watched her for a while, marveling at the innocence of it. This child represented everything that had changed. She lived in a galaxy where humans and ascendancy citizens could coexist peacefully, where the mistakes of the past informed the future rather than defined it, where fear was understood and respected rather than ignored. A young ascendancy mother sat on a nearby bench watching Somin play with her own children. She noticed Velthar and nodded respectfully. She knew who he was. Everyone did. The commander who had learned the truth about humanity and had helped reshape ascendancy society. She is a sweet child, the mother said, gesturing to Somin. She is, Velthar agreed. Her species conquered fear itself and made it their weapon. And then when they had won, they chose mercy over revenge. That takes even greater courage than fighting. The mother nodded thoughtfully. My children learn about the war in school now. About what we did and what we lost, but also about what we gained. They teach that humanity showed us a better way. They did, Velthar said, though the cost was high. He thought of Minsuk, who had died destroying his own colony to protect civilians. Of Jawan, who had crashed his ship into Velthar's flagship. Of the countless humans and ascendancy citizens who had died in a war that should never have happened. But he also thought of Do-hyun's kindness, of Yuna's insistence on justice over revenge, of Hyunwoo's wisdom in choosing reformation over destruction. Humanity had every right to destroy the ascendancy. Instead, they had helped them become better. That evening, Velthar returned to his temporary quarters and continued working on the second volume of his memoir. The first volume, Only with Humanity Did I Understand What Fear Truly Is, had become required reading in military academies across the galaxy. It told the story of the war and its lessons. This second volume was different. It was about what came after, about redemption and forgiveness, about how the species that had taught the galaxy about fear had then taught it about mercy. He titled it simply, What Humanity Taught Us About Hope. As he wrote, Velthar reflected on the strangeness of his life. He had been a conqueror, a destroyer of worlds. Now he was a teacher, helping to build a better future. The transition had been painful but necessary. Humanity had shown the galaxy that strength without wisdom was dangerous. That fear without understanding was vulnerability. That victory without mercy was hollow. Most importantly, they had shown that even the most warlike species could choose peace, if given the right motivation and the right guidance.